Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs and finance professionals prepare themselves and their organizations for change and transformation. Today, we're going to be talking about Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism, the latest book already hitting the Amazon bestseller list by our guest, Tom Peters, called The Red Bull of Management. He's a consultant, writer, columnist, seminar lecturer, and stage performer whose energy, style, influence, and ideas have shaped new management thinking over 43 years, 18 books, 2,500 speeches in 63 countries. And Tom, I think I have about 10 of those books, not all 18. I have to work on that. Anyhow,
you're damn right you do.
I hear you. He's the most influential management thinker ever in my book. And we're here to talk about his latest book, Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism, that he describes as the Summa, the Last Hurrah, and picks up on a podcast that you actually did for us about your Excellence Dividend book back in May of 2019. Yep. Say hello, Tom, and welcome to the show.
Well, it is a delight to be here. And of course, I know that our viewers are from all over the place, but it is particularly a delight to be speaking to someone from Baltimore. As a Beemore boy who on the 7th of November, 1942 was born at the University of Maryland Hospital there.
That's very
and
cool.
Who has capped front teeth thanks to an errant lacrosse stick from a Johns Hopkins attackman. Now that won't mean a damn thing to many, many people who are watching us. But what can I say?
Well, you'll like this story. So I actually went to Hopkins to play football back in the day. And all of the lacrosse players, all these all-American lacrosse players played football as their conditioning sport. Can you imagine?
That's fascinating because of the Navy lacrosse team was loaded with football players who were defensemen in particular, who were using lacrosse as their spring amusement.
Yeah,
and they were damn good.
And that was my story in high school. I played lacrosse as a big defenseman to try to do that conditioning as well. So what a great background.
Goalie. I went
goalie. Oh my goodness! Now I have even more respect for you.
No, it's. I would think you'd have less because it suggests a certain absence of brain power. And those are
a whole lot of courage.
Friends who are hockey friends. That was before the Montreal Canadiens goalie Jacques Plante put on the first face mask that had ever been put on in the National Hockey League. Can you imagine a hockey goalie spending years without a face mask? I mean, it could not have been a very pretty sight.
Yeah, either one of those sports, there's no way. Anyhow, today it's extra special because you've been a major force in my career since I met you at Martin's West in 1995 with The Pursuit of Wow. And then the next time I got to see you live, get my book signed, was at the Reset Business Conference at the Harvard Club in New York with your Little Big Things book release. That was a lot of fun. And then in DC in May of 2010 with Debbie Weil when you did Sweets and Treats. If you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
So some extra special times when I got to see you up front and personal. But let's start. I like to always start with the why. Like I've heard a little bit of this, but tell us the why behind this book now, Tom, that made you do this.
Well, I will tell it to you with an exclamation mark. And I will because, the now discredited McKinsey I worked for several years. But it does mean, which is important to this group, is I have a background in professional services. And the reality is, and God knows what's going to happen over the next 15 to 20 years, is the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers, and the accountants are now losing jobs to artificial intelligence. Yep. And so it's no longer the guy who was working at the coal face or the guy who was working in the Bethlehem steel mill. And this has always been true, but it's 10 times more so today. if I were running a 9-person, 10-person, 20-person financial services advisory group, the deal is, and this is what we mean by humanism, how can I deliver the services, create new services in a way that will embed me in the client's operation, that will make me a significant part of the client's strategic proposition, and we will become brothers and sisters. The fact that you can, and I have a lot of maths, so when I make a smart aleck remark, I'm not totally dull with it. Accounting ain't 1 and 1 equals 2 anymore. It's I think if they've never heard the line, your viewers will appreciate this. When I was in Silicon Valley, I knew one of the guys who had invented one of the early spreadsheets. And I think we were having a couple of glasses of California Chardonnay. And he said, you know what my contribution to society is with a spreadsheet? And I said, I have no idea. He said, I've made a bunch of very dumb people look intelligent. And, as accountants would appreciate, because you know exactly what that means, there's some truth to that. But I just, I'd really, and I'm not sucking up here, there's no group I'd rather be talking to, because this is where the S is going to hit the fan over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And it is, using extreme language, differentiate or die. And the differentiation comes, damn it, I can out-quant almost anybody who's watching us. 2 engineering degrees, 2 business degrees. The differentiation does not come from the fact that I can add 2 and 2 is 4. It is my ability to humanize, to integrate what I'm doing in an emotional way. I mean, it's just, beginning of the story, middle of the story, end of the story. It's an era where all the stuff we used to do, for God's sakes, my grandfather was a cotton goods merchant in Richmond. And I remember, Tom, he could go to a blackboard and you'd write 6 8-digit fixed numbers, $326,422.18. Write them on the board, and he would read you the sum. He was one of those people. There are arithmetic prodigies like that. So and now, needless to say, that ain't part of the act. All the professional services are the same. They are in the people business as much as a damn person running a restaurant at Harbor Place in Baltimore.
Yep. I think, and that obviously that's the whole, I love the book. I've read it. I'm now trying to check off all the to-dos that I'm starting to take away from it, because I love how you put in to-dos. I think it's like 75 to-dos or 73, just chock full of wisdom that you can actually take and do something with. But you're totally right about this. It was the tech tsunami that caught me in your Excellence Dividend. We've been trying to help work and transform our profession so that we can move up into the, I call it value added area, and let the automation do what it does best.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, somebody used the term, and all your team, our viewers know this, AI versus IA. AI is artificial intelligence, which means throw the bodies out the door. And IA is intelligence augmented, which means using the tools to enhance what we are doing. And it's a wonderful distinction. And apparently, and I'm not an expert, more and more people are catching on to this distinction. How do we use the tool to make us better, as opposed to and the other thing that's happening, which is a double whammy or triple whammy for our viewers. And I was just reading about this, and I'm sure they're living right in the middle of it, that with the new pandemic-driven Zoom world, outsourcing is going through the roof. It was outsourcing of this and outsourcing of that, but, because the simple reality is that whether you're in Waco, Texas, or whether you're in Baltimore, or whether you're in San Francisco, it costs you a lot more money to have an employee in a big American city than it does overseas. And I'm delighted that our brothers and sisters overseas have jobs, but I mean, and people are thinking that way now.
Yeah.
You know,
More
maybe
than
we
ever.
outsource a call center. That was ye olden days. As of March of 2020, it's how do we outsource the whole bloody finance function?
Yeah. So get to that. You know, you talk a lot about training, we call upskilling and reskilling. What's your view on training if I'm running a finance team or I'm running a CPA firm, and what do you think about what major skills should we really be focusing on?
Well, I want to ask my accounting brethren. I don't know how you do this. Training is an effing investment. It is not a frigging expense on the P&L or balance sheet. And there are a few things in this world that piss me. I call it, you know, as you saw when you were going through the book, I call training investment number one. Yeah. And I mean it. And just to make the generic point, and then I'll try to be a little bit more responsive. And I said this in the book. If you don't think training is of the utmost importance, pick up your phone or text and call a fire chief, a police chief, a Navy admiral, an Army general, a theater director, and ask them whether training is important. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, again, thinking of where you're situated and where I was from, training is as important for the 11-person accountancy or financial services group that's watching me as it is for the Baltimore Ravens. Period. All stop. Well, one thing that's really crucial for our viewers is a lot of training ought to be what I call horizontal instead of vertical. Not aimed at making you add 2 and 2 faster than you did, but looking at, I have a friend, and he's a physicist, and he worked for the CIA, and his business was taking ye olde days, well, not so many oldie days, taking crappy photographs from the belly of an SR-71 or U-2 and cleaning them up to the point that we could say, oh my God, the Russians have moved the missile from point A to point B. But what happened, and I don't know how we got into it, he said, you know, I had this guy who always had an incredible team. They did clever stuff that I could ever figure out. And he said, then I found out one day, on his teams, he always had at least one musician. You know, the reality is, damn it, to each of the people who are watching us, with a few exceptions of Renaissance women or Renaissance men, is, you know, I look at the world like the folks watching me do, you know, the engineer within. And musicians and theater majors and artists, they see things and they see combinations, and we really need to have non-uniform thinking. And you know, I would really encourage anybody who could afford an extra body to make it a musician instead of another accountant. I mean, I can earn my spurs on this. For some damn reason, I wanted to be an architect. I applied to architecture schools. I was accepted at architecture schools. My headmaster of a little school near Annapolis said to my mother, Evelyn, he can go where he wants, but I'm going to send him to Cornell because they also have a good engineering school, and he's not going to make it in architecture. And one bloody semester after I arrived in architecture, flunked my art course. You know, the next semester was started in the School of Civil Engineering. So I have blinders that I don't understand, but it's not a laughing point. It's a richness. Yeah. You know, Edward de Bono, the creativity guy, always used to say, creativity is horizontal. Yeah. And, you know, there's another piece to that. I was looking at something. I use Twitter, as you know, because we exchange things from time to time. Somebody was talking about their hiring questions, and they said, when I'm hiring somebody, I always ask them, what are the 3 most interesting books that you've read in the last couple of weeks or months? We want people who are curious.
Mhm.
And it can be a stamp collection, but it can also be absolute fascination with 14th century French history, but something that suggests depth and breadth. And it's almost a guarantee for, for curiosity and so on. And there's another thing like that that I am really, really passionate about. It is a time, and you and I have talked about it in just the last few minutes, it is a time of chaos and big things, but I kind of hate the word disruption. We're having this conversation. I had a conversation maybe 3 or 4 days ago. I want our conversation to be infinitesimally better than the one I had 3 days ago. I'm into tiny improvements. I call them in the book TGRs, things gone right. Yeah. A little touch here and a little touch there. And I've got some great quotes that I am too old to remember. But basically, somebody famous, one of those Greeks or somebody else, said, it is the tiny things that we remember and that stick with us. Yeah. And we're not haven't been in offices very much, so this doesn't hold exactly, but it's a midwinter day in Boston where somebody who is in financial services nonetheless stops on the way to work, picks up a colorful bunch of flowers and puts it on the receptionist's desk in our little 20 I mean, that's big stuff. Little twists, little touch. I one time I had a training company out in Palo Alto, and one year we would have a fair amount of client visits, and one year we were doing bonuses, and we'd had some successes, and so there were some pretty big bonuses. And I said, we've got one more left. I wish I could remember her first name. And I said, the one that's left is 1 penny larger than the biggest one, and it's for our receptionist. I said, our training courses have nothing to do with selling our clients. When they have arrived 25 minutes early and they are sitting with her in our rather small lobby, the sale's made. And it's not a throwaway line. They've gotten an appreciation for what kind of a place we run. Yeah. And it's not that we can add 2 and 2 faster or do this with a training course. It's what kind of a client relationship, what's it going to be like? The other thing I've got to say about that, and I've written about him in the past, the late David Ogilvy, an advertising man. And this is a bad year to say this because a lot of people have had incredible difficulties, making it to the next morning. But relative to perhaps a world that will be more normal, David Ogilvy said his favorite activity at Ogilvy and Mather was firing clients who had mistreated Ogilvy and Mather employees. And he, and I remember that at McKinsey, there were people who cost us more than the fees we brought in by just destroying the 5 people on the team. And so, assuming that your revenues match your cost, which is, I certainly understand, not been the same over the last 13 or 14 months, but in a slightly more normal world, there are clients who you just shouldn't hang in there with, even if the number on the check or wire transfer has got a lot of zeros in it.
And that's it's funny because we talk with a lot of the professional service firms about doing that exercise, right? Ranking those clients, using your team that's on those jobs to help give you insight, because the partner doesn't always know what's really going on in that.
Absolutely.
That client notion is a big one. All right. I know we only have a little bit of time left. I want to hit this last thing really on 2 things, but I think they're related. In the book, you have a great piece where you talk about the number one job of all of us companies is to enhance human well-being. And there's a whole lot of our young professionals that are coming of age and as leaders and managers now in this environment, and they're worn out. I mean, they've been through the PPP and now we're in taxi, just one thing after another. What advice can you give them to help pick them up and say, what should they be thinking about to get to the other side? Because I think we're in a period of great opportunity for this profession. I like to think of it as a defining moment, but what can you give them to say, what should we do to pick up and keep going?
I'm going to come at it two ways. The great New York Times columnist David Brooks wrote a column a couple of years ago, and it may be the best thing I've ever read, including the Holy Bible. And Brooks said, there are two kinds of virtues: resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Resume virtues are Tom finished in the top 10% of his class at Cornell, and then he went to business school and finished in the top 10% of his class, and then he was promoted 3 times in 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the resume virtues. The eulogy virtues are, what do they say about Tom Hood or Tom Peters at the funeral? Neither of which we're in a hurry for, and since I'm much older than you, we won't go there. And as Brooks went on to say, you talk about how did he or she treat people, and that's the deal. You know, I was asked to do some podcasts on COVID-19 leadership, and you saw this in the book probably. And so I developed what I call was the COVID-19 Leadership 7.
Yeah.
And it is: be kind, be caring, be patient, be forgiving, be positive, be present, walk in the other person's shoes. And what I really, and I know I don't need to say this, and I pray to God I'm not insulting anybody. And I do have the background from, the engineering background and a stint at Pete Marwick, Mitchell and Co. and so on. Accounting and finance is a people business as much as owning or running a 24-table restaurant in Milwaukee or Baltimore or what have you. And you're there. See, I think, and I've kind of implied this, I think accounting and finance is an art form as much as anything you find at the Metropolitan Museum. It can be done with beauty. It can be done with care. And relative to those eulogy virtues, I don't care if you're an atheist, for God's sakes. I said to somebody, my only test in life is, can I walk past a mirror and not barf? And that's from how you've enhanced the world a little bit, how you've made the world a better place. And I'm going to, shake my fist and say for the umpteenth time in our short period of time, it's as true for accountancy as it is for the blankety blank theater company in Minneapolis or St. Paul, Minnesota. How have you just added a little touch of humanity? How is the world just a teeny weeny bit better this afternoon than it was this morning? And we understand that sort of thing when we're at home with our kids. Well, there's no damn difference. I mean, somebody got into a, excuse my language, pissing contest with me, and they said, an organization isn't a family. And I said, excuse my language, that's bullshit. The reality is, unless you or I were born with a silver spoon, and I have no idea about you, but I sure as hell wasn't. Mine wasn't in. Unless you were born with a silver spoon, the reality is you are going to spend more hours of your adult life at work than you are at home. And I want you to be a family member who's fantastic and so on. But in terms of literally how we spend our time, and it's not, there's a touchy-feely form of the family thing that I don't like particularly, but these are the people I'm living with, and my clients are the people I'm living with. And, that human community should be better, and those dimensions should be foremost. I just have infinite respect for what a professional services firm could be. And I was really looking forward to this conversation because I do know professional services. And even though Pete Marwick isn't what companies are today, I do know particularly finance professional service firms. When I went to work for Pete Marwick Mitchell in DC in believe it or not, in 1970, and that was just when the big seven, right? It was a big eight, big seven. That was just when the big seven were starting to add their consultancies. And now of course it's the big thing, but it's the same point. It's how can we help our clients more? And I know again that I'm a really old fart. I haven't darkened the door of churches, though I was even though I was raised as a good Presbyterian boy. But there's a societal part of this. There's a moral dimension to business. There's a real moral dimension. Business is not, I said it in the book, you may remember, I said, business is not part of the community, damn it. Business is the community.
Yeah.
And particularly our small businesses. People like me in this guru world, you would think from what we write, including myself for a long period of time, that the entire world was the Fortune 500. Well, here's the dirty little secret. 7% of my fellow American workers are employed by the Fortune 500. Hence, doing advanced mathematics, 93% ain't. It is the SMEs that are the backbone of every society, in the world. And there's just such an opportunity to be helpful. I don't have my perfect definition, but the people I think are watching us, and my sort of perfect person is somebody in a 11 to 27 person firm that is helping clients, not Boeing, but the clients I'm helping in an 11 to 27 or 6 to 46 person firm are fellow SMEs. And oh my God, what a difference I can make for them if my head is screwed on right. And I'm not suggesting, theological degrees, but I can just make their worlds a little bit better.
What a powerful endpoint to kind of put the exclamation mark, which you're so good at, on the whole time together here, which is extreme humanism. It's as hard as that, as simple as that, I guess, is what you're really saying. And I do have to put a plug for the book. You called it the worst selling book you ever had, but I use it all the time. And it's this one, the PSF Fits, yes, which you put in your new book as well. That's a couple to-dos in there about that. But yeah, that's what you're talking about, right? It's simple.
You want to hear Arrogance?
Yeah.
If that had been my best-selling book instead of my worst-selling book, I could have saved single-handedly several million jobs. Because, that came out just as outsourcing, was taking place. And what I said, as you hinted at, is, an accounting department in Ford ought to look at itself as this extraordinary, energetic, creative, professional service firm. And the person heading that 11-person accounting department shouldn't be a supervisor. She or he should be managing partner of the XYZ division's financial services group. And I really, honest to God, I am arrogant about it. If people had read the damn thing and lived up to it, an awful lot of outsourcing, and, God bless our brothers and sisters in India and so on, but an awful lot of offshoring, outsourcing would not have taken place. I want to be able to provide the kinds of services that make it incredibly worthwhile, that you're paying me X dollars an hour and you could have gotten it cheaper, but given my value added, you're getting an incredible bargain by having me.
What a great way to wrap us up here, Tom, bringing it home. For everyone on here, you have to make sure you buy this book. It's like $3 on Amazon, I think. By the way, I'll put it in the blog post after this. But buy his newest book, Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism, right? Tweet it out with that hashtag Extreme Humanism. You can tweet with him. He's always on social media. I love that about you. At Tom_Peters is his Twitter handle. His website is www.tompeters.com. com. And wow, what an honor, Tom, to spend this time with you, fellow Baltimorean. And if you're ever down this way, let me know. We'll take you out for a crab cake.